Okay, shh. Looks like, are you ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Andy's going to go next, and I don't know what to say about her topic. I thought, are you sure this is what you want to talk about? Men's emotional struggles? It seemed like, wow, that's a strange topic, but she's actually done a really good job. She belongs to a group of 3 quiet and studious students in the back who are who make every day fun, right? Okay. Andy would like to thank Mr. Wade, her friends and family, and Mr. Joel, who are her advisor. All right, and her title is How to Heal a Guy in 10 Days, Society's Need for More Emphasis on Men's Emotional Struggles. All right, Andy, give me just a second to set the timer up. I'll tell you when you can start. All right, you can start whenever you're ready.
Picture a father, Callum, forever frozen in a Turkish sunset, dancing with his daughter Sophie. As his smiles hit the truth, her memories can only try to understand his hidden pain. Behind the radiant smiles, a silent storm rages, a battle so many men fight alone. In Charles Wells's movie After Sun, the portrayal of a man's hidden struggles is not just a story, it's a reflection of a much deeper, often overlooked issue. What if your father, your brother, or your son is Callum? We often ask men to be stoic and never show their vulnerability, but this silence isn't strength. It's a tragedy unfolding. How many more goodbyes until we finally listen? To start, let's take a closer look at the history of masculinity and its changes throughout the centuries and cultures of the world. In ancient times, masculinity was linked with a man's strength and courage, embodied by warriors like Hercules and Achilles. The Middle Ages ideas shifted this ideal towards chivalrous knights, linking it to physical discipline and wealth. But it wasn't until the Renaissance era did this branch out to include intellect and creativity, introducing the idea of the Renaissance man through architects, poets, painters, mathematicians, and scientists. Today, masculinity is shaped by long-standing stereotypes as well as expectations for men to be emotionally reserved and primary providers. While these ideas are still around today, there are now efforts to move forward from these potentially harmful stereotypes. Unfortunately, given these stereotypes, it is no surprise that men often struggle with their emotions. From a young age, men are often discouraged from showing these emotions seen as unmasculine. This leads them to burying these emotions to avoid being seen as weak. Callum, an interviewee of a study done by Joe River and Michael Flood, shared how in his family, only women were allowed to show sadness, while men, they were expected to stay silent. As a result, when being faced with grief of losing a loved one, he completely fell apart and began drinking heavily to cope. Unfortunately, these cases are not unfamiliar among men, running to substances as a means to drown out these difficult emotions. Others may resort to violence, especially in environments where expressing anger through physical means were normalized. Growing up with this idea, physical harm becomes their solution to fights and arguments. This will become very problematic in both their home and work life. When men's emotional struggles go untreated, their mental health can seriously suffer. Anxiety and depression take hold, and without the ability to seek help, suicide becomes their option. It is devastating to see how many men would rather lose their lives instead of their masculinity. Expressing emotions doesn't always mean crying or raising voices. It could show up in facial expressions, body language, or simply talking things through. While nonverbal cues are important, being able to verbally express yourself is the key to being understood. A lot of men struggle with this kind of communication, and this is called alexithymia, which means having difficulty finding words for emotions. Some researchers link this to biological factors, while many others believe it's the result of how boys were raised, leaving them without the confidence or the language to express their thoughts through their words. Men, as fathers, brothers, friends, and partners, deserve love, care, and compassion. And despite being a very widespread issue, their struggles with emotions are often overlooked. Studies show that men are far less likely to seek help regarding their mental health problems and are 4 times more likely to die by suicide. As this issue continues to go unnoticed, it could spiral out of control and create more harm to society as a whole. Addressing this issue isn't just about helping men. It's about creating a more inclusive culture where emotional health is a priority for all. Fortunately, some progress is being made. Mental health campaigns, support groups, and organizations like Everyman and the Mankind Project are helping men reconnect with their emotions and build stronger lives through coaching, retreats, and community. Without the right approach, even well-meaning efforts could backfire into toxic masculinity. Therefore, placing a greater emphasis is crucial for a healthy societal environment where men could create stronger relationships within their family, seek help, and further improve their self-development. Raising awareness about men's emotional struggles does not just benefit individuals, but society as a whole. With harmful masculine stereotypes set by society and the effect to the decline in mental health issues in men, it then becomes our priority to challenge these norms. Normalizing conversation within families and more intimate communities can create a space where men feel safe to speak up. These early conversations can help men realize that their feelings are valid and eventually encourage them to seek help outside of their inner circles. Support groups, in particular, provide a sense of mutual understanding and encouragement for those who are experiencing the same struggles. Encouragingly, more men have started to seek professional help, going from 18% to 27% of men in 4 years. Continued support, awareness, and accessible resources can help build a culture where vulnerability is met with care, not judgment. Along with this, awareness will also shed the light on the cycle of a deeply damaging cycle of generational trauma. Trauma left untreated can result in anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of which can resurface in parenting, and stress, guilt, and emotional overwhelm are passed on, consciously or not, to the next generation. The film After Sun powerfully illustrates this idea, showing how a father's silent struggles is passed on to his daughter without him realizing it. In a sad, heartbreaking moment, Callum tells his daughter Sophie, "I can't see myself past 40, to be honest. Surprised I even made it to 30. This highlights his unspoken pain. And later on, Sophie tells her father about her feelings, like you're sinking and everything is tired. Callum realizes at this moment, despite his efforts to shield her, his pain has touched her life. This story highlights the urgency of addressing men's emotional health, showing how silence can carry forward unless we create a safe space for healing and honest expression. Moreover, with awareness of men's struggles, their value and declining quality of life may be restored, helping to alleviate the challenges they face. Many men today feel lost about their roles and values in society, especially as traditional values of them being breadwinners have shifted. Wives were economically dependent on their husbands, while husbands are emotionally dependent on their wives. However, women are now able to be independent with or without being wives. This has left men feeling lost, especially as they depended on them for emotional support. Assisting them through this difficult and frustrating stage can help them realize their worth and make them appreciate themselves more. Furthermore, raising awareness could lead to a stronger relationship within their family. Emotional openness plays a key role in a family's strength, especially for young boys. In a way, emotional openness can be seen as a currency in the family, being able to tell about their wants and needs. If young boys are encouraged to be emotionally vulnerable around their families starting at a young age, they will build the ability to recognize their feelings and express them in ways that will make other people understand them. A total of 152 participants anonymously completed a survey assessing the distinct aspects of family stability. The result of the survey showed that relationship satisfaction and perceived emotional intimacy were positively correlated with each other. The greater the emotional intimacy level, the greater the relationship satisfaction. Unarguably, this will ensure a family of understanding and solidity. For many, marriage offers a path for emotional fulfillment, personal growth, and maturity, all of which are reinforced by a strong emotional bond. Interdependency is a key factor in marital satisfaction, yet, with shifting gender roles disrupting the traditional expectations where men were breadwinners and wives were caretakers, men are now feeling as if they have lost their purpose. And with this loss, they fear that their partners would abandon them. They think that their wives would be completely fine without them, but they know they would not be okay without their wives. Feelings of despair, self-doubt, resentment may eventually protrude in forms of verbal and even physical abuse. A marriage of violence is a marriage of weakness. When reconciliation becomes too difficult, couples may choose divorce, which leaves men to grapple with its emotional aftermath. Beyond that, emotional availability is a critical part in parent-child relationship. When a man becomes a father, he is no longer only living for himself, but also for another. Undoubtedly, a parent's emotional condition would reflect their ability to be present in their child's life. While often overlooked, about 10% of fathers experience postpartum depression within the first year after childbirth. This would hinder their ability to bond with their infants during a critical stage of emotional and behavioral development. Since parents are responsible for molding their children's emotional control ability, fathers must first learn to understand and manage their own emotions. When men become fathers without the readiness or the ability to fulfill this role, this would lead to absenteeism, further harming their children. To break this cycle, men should confront these emotions and be ready to grow alongside their children. Lastly, raising awareness about men's emotional struggles is critical for self-development. Awareness is essential to help them build resilience and avoid harmful coping mechanisms. Men who suppress their emotions often run to substance abuse, alcohol, or sex as a means to gain control in replacement over the emotional control they have lost. These behaviors may offer a temporary sense of relief, but over time it would create a cycle of dependency, further damaging their emotional issues. In addition, although having more access to treatments, men often avoid it once again because of social expectations. However, when men learn to face these emotions and confront them directly, they are more likely to develop a healthier coping strategy and focus on personal growth. Oftentimes, when men are faced with feelings of overwhelming pain, isolation, or lack of hope, they believe there is no other solution to end their suffering but suicide. Men in the US are almost 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, with factors of untreated mental health conditions and emotional pain. Research shows that hegemonic masculinity, which emphasizes traits like toughness or emotional stoicism, increases suicide risks, especially among adolescents and older men who have already struggled with their emotions. In addition to that, with economic worries, relationship problems, and work stress, men are then left with this burden of emotional stress, and suicide becomes a means to silence their suffering. A study interviewee named Jeff shared how he attempted suicide because he thought he was the only man experiencing these emotions. This highlights the fact that isolation among men is rooted from the lack of dialogue. Another participant shared a similar perspective, saying how in moments of emotional weakness, suicide is seen as the macho thing to do. Even though suicide may be viewed as a means to hide or cope with pain, it can be considered a highly public display of emotion. Emotional intelligence plays a key role in shaping a man's sense of self and identity. Social pressures often force men to suppress their vulnerability and adopt a shield of strength, which over time can drown their true selves and leave them confused about who they are or who they want to be. It is hoped that with more encouragement, men can develop emotional intelligence through self-awareness and emotional regulation, which would help them understand their feelings and reactions and allow them to face these challenges with resilience. Through emotional awareness, men would also be able to strengthen relationships through fostering empathy, vulnerability, and mutual understanding. For men, these relationships can be a source of emotional support where they feel safe to speak up. As a result, they would be better equipped to navigate life's challenges without losing sight of who they truly are. Some critics might argue that raising awareness of men's emotional struggles might divert the attention from women's challenges or reinforce patriarchal norms. While this concern is valid, highlighting men's mental health does not diminish the importance of women's issues. Rather, it can complement them. Addressing traditional masculinity can also help dismantle restrictive feminine stereotypes that then benefits us all in the pursuit of equality. Another concern is that focusing on men's emotional struggles may foster a self-victimizing mindset. This would picture them as helpless. However, that is not the goal. It is to acknowledge the societal expectation that have long discouraged emotional openness. Raising awareness encourages men to take accountability for their emotional well-being and promote healthy coping strategies, as well as create safe space for mutual support rather than competition. Ultimately, advocating for men's emotional health is a step towards collective healing and a more inclusive vision of gender equality. From the beginning to the end of this thesis, we have discussed why society should put more emphasis on bringing awareness towards men's emotional struggles. Not only is it aimed to create a healthier society, it aims to strengthen familial relationships and improve self-development. We have seen the potential dangers that could come from this issue as more men continue to suffer in silence. Without a change in action, these struggles will continue to result in increased suicide rates or fractured relationships and a growing sense of isolation among men. However, by challenging these harmful stereotypes, we can create a society of love, support, and empathy where men no longer feel afraid to express their emotions and create a deeper bond with other people, as well as seek help when they feel they need it. This change is not a matter of an individual's responsibility. It's a team effort that requires the participation of every single member of society. Essentially, this issue isn't just about men, it's about humanity. Being able to express emotions should not be seen as a weakness, nor should it feel like a privilege. Emotional expression is a natural part of being human. If we continue to dismiss men's emotional struggles, we are at risk of reinforcing a society of insensitivity and weakness. To live in a society where everyone can thrive, we must start to break the stigma around men's emotional well-being. This change starts with you. Engage in conversations, challenge these norms, and listen to the men in your life. Every action counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Our panelists today are Mr. Zoran and Mr. Doni. I'll let Mr. Doni go first.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, Mr.
So first of all, okay, I'm so glad that you brought up this topic, and it is actually beyond my expectation or wonder why you would take this topic as your thesis. Okay. Yeah, because this is actually about like manhood, right? Masculinity, and then being a man, tough man, and else. I was wondering that why do you bring up this topic?
Okay, so during the initial time where I'm supposed to decide what I wanted to pick for my thesis, I had recently watched the movie After Sun, and I knew I wanted to discuss it because it's a movie that has spoken to me in other ways, other movies have never done. And when deciding what perspective I wanted to take from it, I decided to take the message that I received, which was the fact that men's struggles are not talked about enough. So I thought it would be a good topic to discuss.
Okay. Like this actually from the movie, okay? So perhaps you were moved by like emotionally after watching it. How do you see this like relevant in your situation? Is there any like person or people that you observed that you might think that, oh, this movie is so relevant in your real life, for example?
Prior to watching the movie, I didn't really notice the men around me, but once my eyes are open to this issue, I started seeing these patterns in the men and boys around my life. Yeah.
Okay. Any specific person that you observe?
No.
No. Like your dad, perhaps? Or your friends around you?
Family members.
Family members. All right. So that, like, let's talk about the real situation. Okay, so, like the people around you. Okay, perhaps the teachers here. Yeah. Or your family members. Like, what do you think? What actually the things that mostly become the source of the struggle of the man?
I think the primary source of the struggle is people's expectations of men being strong and emotionally reserved, especially with like quotes of boys don't cry. That sets the mindset to them that they shouldn't feel sadness or sorrow. And so that leads them to them struggling internally with their emotions.
Okay, so do you assume that it's okay for boys to cry?
Yes.
Have you seen ever like men or boys around you cried?
Yes, but rarely.
Rarely. Why do you think so?
Because I think due to the stigma around it, tears in boys seem as a sign of weakness, and they don't want to appear weak, so
What
they
about
don't
your
cry.
personal judgment when you see the boys crying?
I think it's good that they're in touch with their emotions and it's okay for them to cry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So we are still running this discussion, okay? Okay, then. Yeah, it's actually from your title itself, right? Society needs for more emphasis on men's emotional struggles. Yeah. What do you think the struggle itself for the men? So, what kind of men do you think that suffer the most struggle? Because you don't actually mention it's actually for universal men, right? So, what I mean is that does your title actually limit to specific kind of man based on ethnicity or job or age?
My topic is aimed to be more inclusive of all men of ages and race, and it's not really specific to one group of men.
Okay, so would you think that it will be different struggles for men based on age, based on nationality or ethnicity? What do you think?
I do believe that these factors could be different, have different impacts on these men, but I didn't really focus into going in deep in age differences or racial differences. But I'm sure there are impacts that can affect the way their emotional struggles are.
Okay, so what do you think that? You mentioned before more. Yeah, you mentioned about the a family man. Okay, who when he becomes a father, he do not live only for himself, right? So, do you think that the man or the father like has the most struggles compared to the single one?
I don't think being a father necessarily means that he would struggle more. In some cases, the sense of family could actually help him and feel less lonely. So I don't think you could consider them at more risk of being in stress than single men.
Okay, let me process. Okay, so yeah. Yeah, I'm a father. I have three sons. Okay, so if you compare to, let's say, Mr. Sorry, yeah, you haven't married yet. Okay, Can you repeat again? Will my struggle has more? I'm talking about struggles, not like the source of happiness. Okay. Do you think that my struggles, my problems, my suffering, my pain would be much greater than Mr. Jolie?
I personally don't think so. I don't think kids would be like a source of emotional burden. It's depending on the person itself, I think. If a single man is already struggling internally with their mental health issues, they would be suffering more. But if a stable father is met with emotional struggles, they might look at it in a less painful way.
Okay, so are you telling that like a father like me we have like a mutual relationship, right, with my society?
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned before, so make connections, intimacy, right? It also brings like more happiness to overcome the suffering itself.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. How many more minutes, Mr.?
Oh, maybe one more minute for you, then give you to Mr. Zoran.
Okay, so you take first, and perhaps I can go back to you again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I must first applaud your thesis. I believe it is I know seem to be a well-read person and it's like reading a book. So thank you for that. I must say, for someone who make a topic about emotion, you need to express that emotion more in your thesis defense. Actually, if I can give you some critics. But above that, let's get on with the content of it. Yeah. I must first at least go with this definition. At what point that you objectively define man? What age? What context? Or is it universal? Can you maybe define that for me?
How I define men?
Yes, in this thesis, in this research.
Specifically in this research, I narrow it down to men who are biologically identified as
Biologically
male.
men, okay. So men include these boys here?
Yes.
Okay, that's my first question. Second question, I want to first ask, because for your batch, it's unique. Men are outnumbered by the females. There's only 6 numbers of like males in every class, and so many females. And these males form these friendships, right? Normally, males go with males and all that. Yeah.
Yes.
In what way do you think friendship, as you know it, enforce this toxic stereotype, or maybe alleviate the problems with it? Can you maybe elaborate on that more?
Is this friendship like boys among boys, or
Yes.
specifically?
Yes,
okay.
normal friendships. Okay, yeah, continue.
Wait, does this friendship include girls being friends with boys, or just
No, boys and boys,
Okay,
just
okay.
normal male exclusive kind of friendship. Yeah.
Okay, perhaps when, let's say, a boy experiences sadness and their friend sees it, this condition could be worsened if this friend takes their sadness with a grain of salt and doesn't validate their feelings, telling the one in sadness to just move on. That would further harm it. But the friend could also be in a position where they comfort the one experiencing sadness and make them feel seen and understood.
Okay, and at least in your observation with your male friend groups, do you think they are healthy in their emotional sphere in your evaluation?
I don't pay attention much, but I think not really in the healthy department yet.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I can concur to that agreement as well. But I want to proceed forward as well. Why do you think males, for male, between no, they are males, right? They help each other up. They have the same gender. They are, I would call, a minority. Why would it still be hard for them to be good friends and share emotion? What's within males that makes them, I would say, emotionally, what do you call that?
Reserved.
Reserved, even in a place like this or place like the other places?
I think it's initially because of how they were raised to begin with. If they were raised in a family where their parents tell them that they're boys, don't show weakness, don't cry, then they will adapt this mindset and live through it. So and I think that's still occurring to today that parents are still expecting their sons to not show signs of weakness in their emotional vulnerability. So this goes on in their life and creates them with the disability to be open about their feelings.
Okay. Yeah. Reason why I ask those questions is because at least in your paper, I don't see much, at least argument as to why it's hard for males to form friendships that are like healthy. Like I think the way I see it, yeah, females, you girls, let's go to the toilet together. Yeah, you guys do it well. For the boys, ew, like kind of thing. So for boys, it's hard for them to show vulnerability even between men.
Yes.
But for girls, it's kind of like encouraged. In fact, yes, let's just be besties. Let's just go together. For boys, it's you're gay and all that. So yeah, there's that kind of like toxic, stupid ideas among their friends. Actually, I expect more of that from ACC, maybe from the friends side of things. Now, my next argument goes with my next question goes with the LGBTQ movement, yeah, which is now quite apparent in America. As you know, in America, it's all the fire right, the woke, LGBTQ, rainbow, blah, 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 blah. And I would say that they have both ups and downs. We're not talking about the theological side of it here, yeah. We all know it's a Christian school anyway. But do you think in what way that this movement, despite their problems, help this kind of idea? Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Okay, with the rise of LGBTQ, there are now men who are more open to exploring what masculinity means to them. And I also believe that masculinity is a very fluid and subjective thing that can't be defined by a single definition. And as more men experiment with more feminine ways in expressing themselves, there are another side of people who see this as something to hate on or spread discrimination. So in the occurrence of men experiencing emotional struggles in this case, I don't think it's the men who are experimenting with their self-expression, but it's the other people who spread hate. So this struggle isn't coming from within, they're not harming themselves, but it's from other people who spread this discrimination.
Yes, I agree with that. I do want to add further on top of that question. It's about the Me Too movement that happened decades ago, I think it's like years ago, yeah. What would happen if a male, putting themselves on the social media using the hashtag Me Too movement, I was abused by blah, 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 blah. What kind of response that he might get from the Twitter first or Instagram first, whichever?
During this age, I would expect to see more support, I think, as there are more efforts to move forward from these stereotypes. But I will also not be surprised if there are other people who are belittling them or telling them as liars in this situation, because there are still men with very close-minded perspectives on being vulnerable.
Okay, thank you. Now, moving on to present, I'm sure you're familiar with the incel movement. Incel? Incel? You don't know?
Yeah,
Involuntary celebrate kind of thing?
yeah.
Oh, maybe. Let's move to the next question. Next question is, in your paper, you say that males, they are emotionally dependent on their wives.
Yes.
And females are economically dependent on their husbands.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Do you think this is a byproduct of a failed patriarchal society, or is it something that is God's design, from the beginning? How do you explain that?
I think that itself is a result of how things were from back then that are still being brought to society today. It's not necessarily a failure, I would say, because now there are more opportunities for women to escape this dependency on men. I also don't think it's a result of how God wants it to be. yes, in a way, women were designed to be more dependent on men, but I don't think he meant it in a way where women can't thrive and be their own people outside of being someone's wife.
Oh, yes. Like, I do want to ask further. Do you think that, at least in the Bible, you have figures? I'm sorry, I think we have some time. 2-3 minutes, yeah. Can you name some female figures in the Bible that is actually presented as heroes? You know, because you know there are so many of them, but can you maybe name some?
I think Ruth, the one who
Okay,
saved the
yeah.
men,
That's a good one. Yeah.
and
Okay.
That's the one I
let's
can
go
think
with that
of.
one. Thank you. Next one. In what way do you think that Jesus is a good example of a man with very healthy emotional struggle? He's God, but he's also a man. Can you maybe explain some of that to us? Thank you.
if I'm not mistaken, there's a part where Jesus wept at one point to God, and that shows that he is not afraid to show this vulnerability, and he's still in touch.
Yeah,
Mr. Doney, do you have anything else?
it's good. Yeah. You can continue. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could see the biblical worldview. Okay, that you put here in your thesis, and I'm actually like glad at the closing. Can you repeat again closing? Because I was thinking that yeah, you actually should do it because you're for after being your teacher. Okay, in the past, I could see that you're kind of silent, not too many boys become friend. Can you please repeat again? And how are you going to do it practically?
The last sentence, engage in conversations, challenge outdated ideas, and listen to the men in your life. How I would do it, I would, let's say in my family, I would start to discuss perhaps difficult topics with my family members to encourage them to be open and not be afraid to show this side of them and challenge outdated norms. I wouldn't reinforce the ideas of like boys don't cry to my friends, to the men in my life, and listen to the men in my life. I would just let them know that whenever they're ready to speak up, I'll also be ready to listen to them.
Okay, yeah.
Can I ask one question as well before we end? So, in Christian circles, especially in America, there's this fear that masculinity is going away, and we can't even tell who boys and girls are anymore. And they point to, and I'm not making any commentary on it, but they point to things like K-pop. We've got guys wearing makeup and that sort of stuff. And no, I'm not making a comment on that, but I am saying that there's this big movement on bring masculinity back. And they're not really about toxic masculinity, but they teach boys how to go hunting, how to fish again, and how to be boys, right? And play with guns or fake guns and stuff. Is that undermining what you're trying to say, or is that okay in your view?
Yes, I think it is going to negatively impact boys in some ways. As I've mentioned with Mr. Zoran's question, I think masculinity is a very fluid and subjective term. So for others, one thing might be seen as masculine while other people think it's a very feminine thing. And with reinforcing this bring back masculinity, I think it will, over time, create harm.
Okay, good. Well, the time is up. You've succeeded in your defense. Okay, good job, Andy. So what we'll do is we'll meet over here for photographs with your friends and
Family.
family. And then let's see, what time is the next one? I think we have...